This is Soul Say. What's up, everybody? This is Kim Brio from Soul Say & Co. And
how you guys doing? This is Mike coming to you live in effect, as always, 23 Centuries Media, your source for media for the 99 and the 2000.
I feel like he's been practicing that, y'all. I'm not sure, but I feel like he's been practicing that.
I've been doing this a long time, my friend. So you do something or do nothing, it's okay. Pero it's okay.
We on here. We are trying to loosen up a little bit, but we do have to talk about some pretty important stuff. And right now we wanted to get on here and just kind of have an open discussion about Black lives. For those that don't know, we have been talking about releasing a podcast that I had started talking about a few years ago called Black Souls Lost. And each episode would kind of follow and document one of our unfortunate Black souls. And as we're preparing to record that episode and release that episode, George Floyd happened.
So for those who don't know, the George Floyd situation is my man in Minnesota, wrongfully targeted by the police, got a knee put into his neck while spectators stood around with their cell phones and observed idly as watching this man die. Basically Eric Garner 2.0. And it's a very sad situation. And I have a lot of interesting views. I try to look at things from the most level-headed point of view. And I'll put it to you like this. Like, I have a collective outrage. It's not a selective outrage to where I'm just like, oh my God, this has happened yet once again. It's more so a collective outrage toward the authorities, toward the spectators, toward a million phones. Not one person to say, hey man, get off. Not one person willing to sacrifice jail time to get him to save the man's life. But you stand around and idly watch the man die. But I don't want to put my attention into that. I want to start right here.
Wait. But I mean, since you did, hold on, wait, no. You open that can of worms, and I got a question for you because you opened that can of worms, sir. Question. Okay. Let's arguably say that if one of us were those bystanders and we, ran up on some, yo, get off him, could it not be argued that could have been killed, and could you not say that self-preservation was in the thoughts of those people around him?
Self-preservation or fear? Let's be honest, okay? A great deal of people are not going to jump up there. More than likely would be a woman who would stand up for what was right before to be a man. So let's just cut that part and just get straight to that. In most of these situations, people will look at a situation and immediately they look at what is wrong and what should happen. But the first thing that comes to mind is not who's going to do it. Okay, case in point, I have a friend named Sean. She was attending UIC at the time. I came up to come and visit probably a year and a half after I moved to Florida. We're on the red line. Some guys harassing this old man. Old man got to be like in his late 60s, early 70s, harmless old guy. Some guy, he could be in his 40s. He's drunk, he's belligerent, acting, a whole donkey on the train. I'm just sitting around looking. It's a train full of men. I'm like, okay, I guess ain't nobody going to do nothing. So me, I'm thinking to myself, typical Chicago type of mentality is, whatever. If it don't get violent, ain't nothing to do. All of a sudden, I'll stand up and I just kind of want to peep over. There's a woman and her daughter over in the far left corner, frightened to death about what they see happening. All of a sudden, we get to the stop. I want to say we got to Cermak, 22nd Street for those who don't know. We get to 22nd Street, box cutter come out. Immediately, I'll rush him. The thing that upset me the absolute most about the situation.
You were the only one, weren't you?
Of course I was the only one. But the problem that I had with the situation is that I'm 6'1". At the time, I was about 165, 170 pounds conservatively. Every man on that train was bigger than me. Not that that mattered, but at the same token, it was a lot of us that a nonviolent approach could have been taken to contain dude, get him off the train and cut that out. Instead, half the train car runs when the train car opens up at Cermak when the knife come out. I'll run up on him. The part that upsets me the absolute most is the fact that the guy turns into Jello. He turned into Gumby right in front of my very eyes. Like, oh, okay, cool. As soon as somebody come and check you, now all of a sudden you ain't so tough. But when you was trying to chastise the old man, you felt bad. And it upset me because now I want to fight and you ain't going to give me one.
Okay, let's do this. Let's pull back from that only because I'm going to tell you this.
Well, I want to make this. I want to make this point. The point is that in relation to a lot of these situations, this ain't particularly about what I would do in a situation to where I can honestly say if somebody else who was closer to the situation intervened, would I have likely got up to do something? Probably not. We don't know what we're going to do until we're faced into that situation. It's just in that situation, I chose to act.
Now, let's do this before we even go there, because I feel like we jumped the train car a little bit. I think I use a train analogy because you brought it up. Train. But I feel like we jumped the train car a little bit. Let's talk about the obvious in the room.
Okay. Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the real culpable parties. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the fact that before we even get to people standing around, that this happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how much research you've done thus far on it or whatever, but from the different
whatever's out, I'm pretty well versed.
From the different camera angles that they had, it showed that he was not resisting arrest, he was not fighting, he was not doing any of those things that the police claimed that he was doing.
But he was probably a shoplifter 20 years ago. Don't forget about that.
Okay, can we keep it real?
Okay,
let's keep it real. So this is what happens. Whenever this happens, they pull all of these things from the records of these people. And they say they were a shoplifter, they were this, they were that. Let's keep it a buck. Irregardless of color. A lot of people in their lives done shoplifted whether they was caught or not. Mm-hmm. Let's keep it a further buck. A lot of those people that were shoplifting and were caught, the likelihood of it showing up on your record is higher when you look like me.
Well, let's take it a little bit further than that because we're going to address the elephant. Let's address the big elephant. Regardless of whatever a person has done in their past, if it has not been a serial situation that was directly related to what led to this unfortunate incident, it's irrelevant. It does not matter. It's absolutely it should be stricken for the record. And the thing is, the reason why I started a media company, why you started a media company, and several other independent ventures is primarily because he who paints the narrative is the person who, like, basically the loudest voice in the room. So therefore, no matter if it's CNN, no matter if it's Fox, no matter if it's NBC, whoever the biggest voice in the room is going to make the most noise, and they're going to be the one that's going to be heard over everybody else. So therefore, it's easy for you to bring up my transgressions or my past history to desensitize the people to the fact that I was an innocent bystander in what took place. And then on top of that, you villainize the victim, and you what's the other word? And you make an angel out of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So already you use the media machine to sway public opinion, because as we know from the 1980s, 1970s, I mean, OJ is the one of the most notable. The court of public opinion is very strong when it comes down to how you can sway evidence. So in a situation like this, what else do you need? The officer was so brazen as to put his knee in the man's neck and choke him out and kill him right there in front of a crowd of people.
But at the same time, G, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to point out the obvious, that you're asking for common sense from a society that now has a president that literally blatantly lies to us as a public, and we're just supposed to accept it.
Who cares?
What? No, let me. Well, here's the thing.
Go.
No, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why it matters. Okay. Because we have numbed ourselves down to the point where, as a society, we can literally just be lied to and accept it. He has numbed us down to that point. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So now I'm looking at it like, I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm not disagreeing with it, but I can't expect people to do any more than they've been doing before. Like, what is it going to take for something to really be different? What's different about this situation than Eric Garner? What's it going to take for it to be different? Because right now I don't feel like it's getting better. I feel like it's getting worse because they can be more brazen because of who we have in office, in my opinion.
Okay, so this is you see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
You see what that is?
That's fishdom.
Fishdom, yeah, it's a game for the iPhone. What if I was playing that while you were talking?
That's rude as hell.
It would be, but what would be an indication of is that the distraction was more entertaining than the facts, right? So it's not the fact that President Trump is desensitizing people. You have to understand that elected officials are reflections of what the people were already feeling. They didn't get this way because of Trump. They were that way because of Obama, and Trump happened in response to it. He was elected, then he happened, not before. So blaming Trump for what's been going on since colonialism is
right.
Absolutely absurd.
Let's be clear. Now, I'm not blaming Trump. What I'm saying is he is part of what sets the climate.
No, he's not.
There's something that has to be said and noted for the climate that we're in.
The climate is set for two reasons. Number one is because of the fact that it happened once and you let him get away with it. If you got a boyfriend and he smacks you once and you let him get away with it, you have set the tone to say that's okay. So because of the fact that there's no reasonable, rational response every time that it happens, it gets more and more. Just like the serial killers, just like the people who go shoot up schools, shoot up movie theaters.
So what do we do? What do we do? They up there, we marching, we protesting, we this, we that. What do we do?
If that hasn't worked since 1940, what you think worked? I want you to think about something, okay?
You tell no for real.
Hold on. I'm going somewhere with you.
Okay.
Historically, the America that we know has had numerous treaties with the civilized Indian tribes of the United States of America, all of which they have never truly honored any treaty that they've ever created in history. However, the premise was that when there were Indian uprisings, you had to get people to the table, because in order for your people to stop dying, we got to find a way to make peace. People are not going to make peace with docile people. If you're just going to roll over and play dead and walk around with your signs and everything else, nobody's going to come to the negotiation table with you. They're going to pet you on your head like the good little dogs that you guys are, make you feel good until you go back into your little docile chamber, put something else on the TV. Trump is going to make another stupid tweet. It's going to be the sea of distractions that are going to come out. And then once that sea of distractions come out, then all of a sudden, now it opens up and sets the precedent for the next thing.
So what does that look like then? If we're sitting here and we're talking about, okay, until we stop rolling over, okay, what does that look like? What do you like? Does that look like? What does that look like? What does that look like? What do we do?
So let me ask you, what does an abused girlfriend do to get herself out of an abused situation?
She removes herself from the situation.
Okay, so how does she remove herself from the situation?
She leaves.
What's another word for that?
Where you going? I don't know.
You fight back. No matter what the circumstances are, no matter how you utilize the terminology, until you fight back, you don't fight back with legislation and more faulty promises. You don't fight back with you fight back in a sense to where if there's a specific community, if Inglewood was constantly under attack by police officers for whatever's going on, the first step that you fight back is you clean up your own backyard. So once I can prove without a shadow of a doubt that you're lying about what happened, then that gives me means to retaliate. So retaliation is called self-defense when it's justified. So
you just said something heavy, and I want to pause so that people could take this in, because what you just said was fighting back doesn't begin with protesting. Fighting back begins with getting our shit in order so they don't have.
The thing is that you have to understand the concept of paper genocide, is that when you have people who create laws and you are ignorant to those laws, you don't understand how those laws work for you or against you, you become victim to it. So no matter what the situation is, you have to always take into consideration is that first you have to educate yourself about the ways that things operate, not the way that you feel about them. And this is why I tell people when they get into their triggered points of view that it is useless. When I see people on Facebook and they going through this whole wave of emotion and stuff like that, that's great, because no matter how many times you post or how many times you share the article and all the stuff like that, you know what you're doing? The only thing that you're doing is making Mark Zuckerberg money. Literally.
I get that part. We're not gonna keep going there.
All I'm saying is until actual tangible action is taken, and the way that you take action is if there's a situation where there's a collective of people, like if I'm here in Orlando and something happens in Orlando and I am privy to that situation taking place, at what point in time do you say I need to step in and do something? So if there's something that happens, if I'm here from the moment, if somebody comes and bursts through my door right now, and I have a means of defending my family, do I just lay down and take it because they have a badge on? Or do I fight with everything that I have to protect my home because I don't know why you here?
So let me ask you this then. This is realistic. If your family lived in Minneapolis, what actions do you think you would be taking right now?
First and foremost, this is the problem that I see, is that there's nothing wrong with being angry, but the way that you anger. People have to understand that how you anger has to either fuel an action. What we do is we kind of like pots of water. So you put the pot of water on the flame and it starts to come to a nice boil. Then you turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up until that boil overflows and then ends up putting the fire out. And that's what happens, that we get so steamed up and so upset that we ultimately put our own fire out. The whole thing is that while that momentum is going, it needs to be a concept of, I don't care what's going on with you. I don't care what's going on with you. Based on what we know about the situation, you, me, these people, we need to go to where this police officer is, and we're not leaving until we get an explanation right here in front of them. If we don't like what we heard, then we take it to the next level. And then
so
the
let's
next level
argue
after
this.
that.
Let's argue because not argue. Let's discuss. Let's discuss from this angle, because I can probably say that I wouldn't be surprised if there were in fact those that did go. Shout out to Inglewood Barbie, Alita. I rock with her so hard. And she posted up the screenshot of, that, and it had one of the officers' names and addresses, and people were coming for her. And she was like, I don't care. Don't come for me. You're misplacing your energy. So with that being said, I would argue that probably is happening. But how do we as a society go from resolving this one situation to the bigger picture? Because I'm just going to say, I don't really think that there's anything in this one particular situation that they could do to suffice the structure of it.
There's something to do.
What?
I'm not going to say it on here, but I'll put it to you like this. What's understood need not be explained.
Okay, so let me say this, okay? Given that, and I have not done this research, I don't believe this is even a thing, and I highly doubt it is. Let's say Minnesota had the death penalty. Let's say that Minnesota was a death penalty state.
You know, I like my facts, so let's find out.
Yeah, go start looking it up. And while I'm talking to you, you look this up. Let's say that Minnesota was a death penalty state. And if Minnesota was a death penalty state and they took these 4 officers to court and they were found guilty and they were all 4 executed, okay? Let's say, and now let me say for the record, I personally am not in saying that we should do this. I'm just setting a picture. Say that happened. Why do you think
it was going in 1911, just for the record?
It was what?
They did away with, they abolished it in 1911.
Okay, so the death penalty was abolished in Minnesota in 1911. Let's be clear, guys. So I'm not saying that this is what should happen. So anybody who try to come for me, that's not what I'm saying. I'm painting a picture for conversation's sake. But for conversation's sake,
Let them
let's
come.
say that
Let them come.
happened.
Let them
For
come.
conversation's sake, let's say that happened. If that did happen, I personally am not persuaded that this would not happen again in 6 months or a year. I personally don't think so. I think that some little nowhere town and somewhere else is going to still have their crooked police, and the same thing can happen somewhere else. It may not happen in a large city, but it's going to happen. So I'm saying that it's too deep. What do we do?
This is again, as I stated, until you fight back, nothing is going to change. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because once you decide that you're going to enter the fight, you got to see the fight to the end.
So you're saying that in living our lives, and this is what I'm kind of hearing and interpreting, and you tell me, but in living our lives, we need to, when the situation is noted and needed, fight back.
Yeah.
Even if it's against law enforcement?
Especially. The precedence has to, this is what happens. The precedent has to be set. And the thing about it is the fact that at the end of the day, I have a family. So a lot of us have families. So one of the biggest things that we think about before we make decisions oftentimes is, how will my family be affected if something was to happen to me? So if I go out here and I jump into a brawl and I catch a felony because I was trying to be Mr. Vigilante and now I can't work to support my family, or now it's harder for me to work. The problem is the fact that there's not a community that is going to support me as I try to get back on my feet for doing the right thing. It's almost the same as being the guy that didn't snitch, that go and do all the years and he come back and the only thing that you got is respect from the hood, but nobody's taking care of your family. Nobody's taking care of your kids. Nobody's going to take care of you when you get out. There's nothing. So a lot of it is a selfish method of what's in it for me, but a lot of it also is where is going to be the community support? Where's it going to come from?
Yeah.
So therefore, if people knew or understood, it's almost like how I say about, the abuse conversation. If abusive men knew that there were men who were going to check that immediately, a lot of abusers would think twice about the actions that they take. There might be an increase in verbal abuse or non-physical abuse, but the physical form of it is going to go out the window, especially if he knows that I hit you by 7 and by 7:45, the mob is at the door about to handle you for it.
Right. Now let me pull this and identify this for the people that are listening so that they understand. Let me pull and identify this. What you're saying heavily is that a lot of the reason that we can't mobilize and do those things is because Black people don't have each other's backs enough to be able to be unified enough to get this done, because it's almost like we're in a society where it's each man for itself.
Well, it's most like this. It's like there's no structure. It's like how you have a Japanese consulate or a Chinese consulate or something, where you have, there's no American Black consulate. There's no place that you go to where American Blacks can discuss their grievances. There's no world court that you can go to address the issues of what's going on as far as racism in America. So if, for instance,
how do organizations like NAACP and Operation Push, how do they fail at that?
Get rid of them. They suck. They've never actually done anything. I don't care what anybody wants to say. The only thing that they've done is nullify people to believe that there was some level of inclusion in society that never wanted them in the first place. Let's just cut the crap. NAACP, I mean, Operation Push, the Jesse Jacksons, the Al Sharptons. I'm no fan of them, never been a fan of them. My thing is that when you look at the hierarchical structures of vigilante groups that we've had in our history, if you look at other races and denominations of people, generally they have military leaders who speak up on their behalf. Generally, it's politicians. It's somebody with a position of power. In the Black community, it's always been pastors. So the same people who've been lulling us to sleep with the same word for generations is the same ones that's speaking up on our behalf about how we need justice.
Let's talk. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's go down that rabbit hole for a minute.
Go right ahead.
say that we put into place an organization similar to the Black Panthers or something like that, that was headed in that direction, built for that nature, etc., and they did mobilize and we did get some steam and we were going. How do we then not repeat history in the essence of what happens then? For people who are just watching this and may not know, what happens then is when we do create those infrastructures, the adversary will come into the ranks of the top and topple it from the top on down. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. How do we avoid that happening now? How do we avoid to fall into those same rabbit holes if we are blessed enough to create that?
Let me ask you a question. Do you remember when all the Latin Americans all over the United States, they rallied, I forget what year that was, like 2005 or something like that, when they were trying to fight the whole immigration thing? It's like there was mobilizations all over the United States. You remember that?
I'm gonna keep it funky. I don't.
Okay. So clearly, since you don't know, the one thing is that I challenge you to find the name of the leader. You see, if it's not a military coup or something like that that's being led by a specific person, one of the things that we have always gotten crippled by is the fact that there's this need for leadership. Got to be a figurehead at the top, and then we mobilize underneath it. Gang structure, street gangs, right. Whatever the circumstances are, it's like this hierarchical understanding.
Right, like we create a hierarchy chain.
Instead of there being a situation to where, if, let's just say I was the head of this operation, it needs to be like in the ancient Greek stuff, like where you had the three-headed hydra. You cut off one of my heads and three more appear in its place. So you get rid of this general, then there's going to be three more generals that are already put in position to sprout up the moment that I'm gone, and they have instructions. The thing is that you can't destroy something if you don't know who, what, when, where.
What's next? Yeah.
And this goes back to my philosophy about what's understood needs not be explained. So the thing is that people are so in fear of the repeat of COINTELPRO and Black Wall Street that we can always get to a certain point of conversation, but this deep ingrained fear of something that we've never actually lived through ourselves has us crippled to the position where we believe that all of this somehow means something. It doesn't mean anything.
Here's the thing. I wanna make a quick comment to you in regards to that. What's understood don't need to be explained. And I've said this to you and a few other people because I pride myself on hanging around people that are not necessarily common. You feel me? Mm-hmm. What I need y'all to understand, what's understood by you is not necessarily understood by the masses. So a lot of times when I come to y'all and I want y'all to break this down, it's because I'm trying to be the bridge between what is really common sense, which really ain't common, and the rest of everybody else who really ain't there.
So let me ask you this question, because this is where I have this argument with people in this conversation about common sense. If I walk up to you and choke you, what is the innate response that you have?
Defense. What do you mean?
Common sense. So therefore,
but what's common to me may not be common to everybody else.
Just because a person is led by fear or restraint does not mean that they don't have the inner innate desire to respond.
Okay, so let's paint that picture and give me that scenario and let's talk about it. And say you walked up to me, you choked me, but say I was a woman who was in an abusive marriage for 25 years and that's what he did. And the only reason I'm out of the marriage is because he died. Am I going to respond then the same way that Kim Brio right now going to respond?
Depends on you.
But if I don't respond that way, you can't then say she don't have common sense. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like...
See, this is the thing. That just because you don't do it, don't mean that you don't know that you should. If my daughter knows that the stove is piping hot and she shouldn't put her hands on it, but she touches it anyway, that don't mean she didn't know not to do it.
So let's talk about it. So do racists know better?
Does any race know better?
Do racists, do they know better then?
So let's look at this, okay? And whenever I have a conversation pertaining to rights, pertaining to race, the one thing that I always tell people is first things first, when I'm talking to somebody of another race, no matter what their position is, we have to agree here that human rights. Do you feel I have the right, the same equal right to live as you? You may not feel like I have the right to live in the same space as you. But if
Right.
you feel that my life has value and I have a right to live, we can talk. If we can't see here at human rights, only way out of this conversation is death, because there's nothing I can tell you or nothing that you can tell me that's going to make me believe that you're here and I'm here. It's just not going to
So
happen.
let me interpret this for the people too, for the others who be battling within themselves, as if they're racist or not. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm gonna keep it real. Like, I watch the others around us in situations like this, and
Mm-hmm.
they have inner battles. Like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Da, 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 da. You know what I'm saying? I think that he illustrated a very beautiful and basic point. You will know if you're a racist if you believe that him, the black bum on Lower Wacker, all have the same rights to live as you, then you're not a racist.
Let's make sure that we don't muddy that water, because what you
Unpack
said
that.
has like 7 or 8 inaccuracies in it.
What has?
Prejudice. A
Yeah.
prejudice means a preference,
Yeah.
which means that you can be my friend, we can get money together, we can do everything, and I still think I'm better than you.
Mm.
Like, in our own culture, we have prejudices.
Yeah.
So if I
Now,
sit back,
is that classism? Does that where that? How does that come into it? Is that like a classism thing?
I mean, it's rooted. If dark-skinned people felt that they were superior to light-skinned people, it's the same thing as light-skinned people feel like they're superior to dark-skinned people. The only thing is, if there's a power structure ahead of the darks and the lights that gave a certain preference to the lighter ones than the darker ones, then at that point in time, because the power structure has shown favor to one over the other, then that's when it starts becoming believable.
An issue, right? Right. 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 Right.
But at
Right.
the same token, it's just like, if I sit back and I say, hey man, like, I need me a pitch black oil painting woman. Like, I need a woman so black that it's like, if you cut the lights off and she close her eyes, I don't know she in the room. If that's what I say, but then I marry a light-skinned woman, preference is preference. But reality is, I love who love me. Don't make a difference. However, the whole thing is that if I am a person who, I would say, based on my understanding of a few, that I will castrate the whole, not based off the fact that I'm just really not physically attracted to them, but if I'm just willing to say, hey, I won't touch a dark-skinned woman, everything about them, they ignorant, they loud, I can't stand the texture they have. If I say something like that, then yeah, that is a prejudice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very important conversation. Preference versus prejudice.
So now you,
Preference is I prefer to be with a black man, but if I could fall in love with a white man, I'm in love with a white man and we get married.
so in these instances, is understanding the fact that there's a difference between me loving who loves me versus I'm only going after this because I think everything else is inferior.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Now
yeah.
we take this to a multiracial conversation. So when it comes down to a situation where people have this illusion of white racism, well, if you have no means of, so hold on, let me take this hat off. It's getting hot in here. I'll take off all my clothes.
You getting turned up?
No, just glad I cut my hair. My wife is proud of me. So now my hairline like it blend a little bit better. Anyway, so we start talking about racism. Racism itself is literally a structure. So when they say, okay, well, you want to kill racism, well, how do you kill race? What is racism rooted in? So let's go to the textbook definition of racism. I want to make sure that I give this exactly how it is. So the definition of racism: prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directly against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. So here's where this happens. A race and a prejudice can be the same thing if you have no power. If you have power, then you can enforce superiority, i.e. Jim Crow.
Then that's when it turns from prejudice to racism, because you then have the means to be able to do something and impact something in a way.
Right. So the whole thing is that here's a system, and I'm gonna break it down. So I need you to follow along with it.
Okay.
So let's just say we're gonna say Gold Coast area off of Division, going back down there, Chicago North Side. You know, you got what's that, Weston House or Whitney Young, whatever's over there. They get more tax dollars. So they get more equipment. Their schools are better furnished and whatever have you. Now you got Team Inglewood out over here on 63rd, 65th, whatever street that the new school is on. And they don't get as many resources because there's not as much enough tax dollars coming in. So the property values surrounding the areas are based off of the desire to be in those areas, the ease of transportation to be able to get to and from other areas, get to and from work, and also what's available in the neighborhood. So therefore, the places that have some level of neighborhood pride, where there are businesses where the dollar bounces more than one time within a neighborhood, they will generally have a higher property value. So, and also historical value of things that have happened in the neighborhood. I mean, there's so many different variables. Right. However, somebody could say, okay, well, it's an act of racism that taxes don't get evenly distributed from one school to the next. Well, fair enough. Now let's take this into consideration that if the neighborhood itself, the zip code, does not bring in the same level of tax revenue, that's like me saying that, hey, I went to school for 8 years to become a lawyer. You went to school for a year and a half to become a manager at McDonald's. You make 45,000. I should make 80,000. All of a sudden they change the law to say that we both should be getting paid 60,000. Well, that's crap. I put in more time than you. My profession requires more emphasis than yours. And that's the reason why I went and did it.
But then doesn't that then bleed down into the rabbit hole of opportunity? Because does it then matter if that other person...
That's where
you was going, right?
That's where I was going. So now when we start talking about if we're not going to level the structure because this group over here brings in more tax revenue than this group, then now we say, okay, well, where's the opportunity? So now the opportunity, I can debunk the opportunity really quick if I'm on the political spheres because of the fact that, well, this community brings in this much money on a regular basis. However, majority of your money go out to hair care products, alcohol, Jordans, XYZ. So when we have the data to say, well, their money goes back into the neighborhood and it goes into the school, into different things that contribute to the neighborhood, and your money goes in and out the door.
Yeah, and then that's even further when we talk about Black businesses and not having the Black businesses, because if none of the gas stations are owned by anybody in the community, they go into wherever that is.
But then let's take it to the next point. Since all the businesses are owned by people that are not in the community, are not spending money in the community, then that money is being taken and is contributing to the tax revenue of wherever they're going, be it Palos Hills, wherever it is that they're going to, and in Rogers Park, whatever they're going to go do. So now, here's that point. And this is where the whole thing, it just revolves around in a circle. So now the reason we don't have businesses in our area is because we're not properly educated. Well, we need more tax revenue to properly educate you. Well, we need opportunities. Well, you have opportunities, but you take the money and you do X, Y, Z, but we don't know what to do with our money because we're not properly educated. You see how it just keeps going around in a circle? It's a cycle. Now, the thing is, was that a cycle that was created that you guys are ignorant to purposely, that you had no idea that you were in that hamster wheel the whole time? Or is it the fact that people continue to ignore the obvious? So if you keep going to school, and they keep telling you college, you got to go to college, but majority of people who don't go to college don't come out doing what they went to college for, don't make any money, and almost 50% of people who go to school for any degree are not doing work in that degree. You know how many psychology majors there are?
Do you know how many psychologists there are?
Exactly. You better go to Washington State. That's the best place where you're going to actually find them, because all the rain is like the most depressing place for you to be is Seattle, Washington. Statistical facts. I'm sorry, just got a bunch of crap up there. Anyway, but
you know so much for no reason.
No, I don't. Anybody can pick up a book. I'm not special. Anybody can read a stat. So anyway, this is what I'm talking about as far as how we have a level of understanding about the structure of what could be considered. Is it racism or is it blatant ignorance that people are ignoring the obvious?
And a step further than that, let me tell you what I heard when you said that a minute ago. Mm-hmm. I also heard that the reality is, what I hear so many Black people say is, everything you say and I see it, you right. It's not that I don't want to do nothing about it, but I'm literally just spending my life trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. it's not the easy thing for me to do, to go and make a difference and do those things. You understand what I'm saying? So what do we say to those people that are aware but have not taken personal accountability for that, and have decided to stay within their own bubble? Because that's a lot of people watching right now that's just like, look, you right, I agree, but right now all I'm worried about is me taking care of my kids, taking care of my parents, my whatever. And you understand what I'm saying? What do we say to those people?
Here's the problem, and I've expressed this problem to you before. It's not my job to do that. It's my job to use my voice and my platform to educate and motivate the people who I'm able to reach. So if somebody comes to me and say, hey, I like what you're saying, it's like how I told you once about a Facebook post, how I see this to be a very common thing with Facebook posts. I post up me growing my own food and stuff like that because I feel like it's a neat thing to know. I think it's an especially in the climate that we're entering, it's an essential thing to know how to grow your own food. But outside of that, somebody will say on Facebook, man, we need to imagine how powerful it would be if we knew and understood agriculture and growing our own food. And then somebody come right underneath that, but niggas don't do this, this, and this. And immediately the momentum of that dies. So what happens that instead of somebody having the power to say in their brain, hey, well, since we both appear to be on the same wavelength, why don't we do it?
But okay, but can it be argued that we're in such an urgent time that we can't say, let's work with the 2 out of 10 that we got that's ready?
Then work with the 2 out of 10.
Can we make a difference on on the level that we need to make a difference? Like, because here's the thing, I feel like the amount of change that needs to be had is so high, but the amount of people willing to do anything for that change is so low. How do we bring that closer together?
You ever play Double Dutch?
Actually, no.
You ever watch the game of Double Dutch get played?
Yeah.
See the ropes going, and then somebody just they find a creative way and they just jump in there and they start doing what happens. Did I just answer that for you? What happens? The fact that somebody waiting on somebody else to jump in, and the whole thing is the fact that the reason why movements get shut down is because of several reasons. It's like the degrees of separation in our communities are so high, they're so large that there is no one specific antidote for it. So when it comes down to the black on black issue, that's an issue its own. When it comes to us defending ourselves against police or defending ourselves against racist actions or glass ceilings or whatever the circumstance may be, entrepreneurship, agriculture, home ownership, starting businesses, supporting our own. These are all different fights that you can't just bubble them up and try to fight all these fights. So there was a committee that was dealing with this, and there's a committee that's dealing with this. So if I'm going to go to First Precinct and I'm going to be out there, then you need to be in Inglewood. Somebody needs to be fighting the fight, or somebody needs to be leading the movement in these areas where we have these degrees of separation. If we don't have that set up, then we're fighting a slow, steady battle. Not a useless one, but when people have this leadership complex to where they feel the need to have to fight the entire fight themselves, it's not about you. This is a movie. You're just a cast member. So whether you got a speaking part or whether you in the back sweeping when the mobsters come in, play your position.
And it's funny that you said that, because as you say that, as someone who grew up in the Black church culture, I see that mirrored as well, where at some point, some ministers, it becomes then about them and their ministry and no longer about the ministry of what you're supposed to be ministering about. It becomes about you and you being seen. And that's when...
Well, that's another thing. It's like, my thing is that I feel like first and foremost, one of the most important things that need to happen is that you have to have police reform. There's no reason, anytime that, and this is a good point that you brought up, the church structure, anytime that you have anybody in a position of doing the same thing, especially if it's a position of power over a period of time, power becomes corruptible. So if you don't rotate the positions out regularly to give people a chance to be desensitized. If I'm working in Humboldt Park every day and I'm seeing the same thing, I've watched these guys grow up. I watched these guys in Lawndale. I arrested his father. Now I'm arresting him. It's like eventually every time I see a person's face, they become a perp. They don't become a person.
And it's crazy that you said that, because even if you look on the other side of it in law enforcement, there are so many families where it's generational law enforcement, where my dad and my sister and my grandpa and my everybody were all cops. And think about the double whammy of that if that family happens to be racist too.
But take it a step further. If you go to like the correctional facilities and the jailhouses, they're out there in those little small towns where that is the major economy in those towns. So they employ the wife, the brother, the sister. So those who are not in agriculture or farming or something, they work for the corrections facility. It's a badge of honor to get their time to go and be a part. And you got to understand that when you are out in the street with criminals, you adopt a criminal mentality to stop the criminals. So you become corrupted with the streets. You have to understand. See, the thing is that despite the fact that these string of situations that happen with these cops, we act like PTSD is something that is solely military and military alone.
No, I think that our whole society is dealing with PTSD right now.
But we have no real value to the understanding and the need of mental illness training. We don't really understand it. I mean, if you see how many military vets are scared to come home and say that they're suffering from PTSD because they'll get marked off in their files and blacklisted and they can't work and take care of their families. I mean, what do you think that the cops and everybody else think? So
right.
So the thing is that I'm not trying to give anybody a pass. What I'm saying is that mental illness, especially after the repetition of seeing so many things, I mean, you got to understand that somebody just open fire in a street and a little kid just got killed on their birthday playing outside in the front yard. What do you think that do to a cop that now got to go find a perpetrator? You a father, it's flashing in your head thinking about your little boy, your little girl, your grandkid. We don't think about all of it.
I think that I'm going to make it even bigger, and I'm going to say that as an American society, we don't even address mental health directly enough, because I talked about this on an episode of Damn Kim, where mass shootings and things like that, I believe, are a symptom of it. And then fast forward, I talked about it on an episode with Jeremy Kennebrew, where we talked about how within our community, we can't even get to the point where we're getting help for our mental health issues because it's still taboo. So you understand what I'm saying? So what do you think that we as an American society need to get more real about mental health, and that will begin to touch a lot of different aspects of things that need to be corrected?
First, we as American citizens need to get real about America. Let's just start that this is what it is. The whole thing about it is the fact that anytime that a situation happens, Black people automatically jump to racism. Anytime that a situation happens with, like people are talking about the whole Karen movement, all of a sudden, oh, that's reverse racism. If it is, who cares? But at the same token, it's just
you'll be okay. We've been okay for a long time. You'll be all right.
But the whole thing is that in a reality type situation, we're not honest. We're not honest about what's really going on.
Stop biting your tongue.
I'm not biting my tongue. I'm leading. We're not honest about what's going on. We're not honest with ourselves. The stuff that goes on inside of our own households. We're not honest. And then we take these corrupted people that we create and we send them out in the world to go and pretend like they are well-manicured people. And then they lose their minds in some situations or instances, or you create these shelters for these kids, or you create these microcosms for people, and then you send them out in the world to be around other people who do not have universal values, and then you get the situations that you get.
Yeah. So and that is way beyond race. We're talking American society.
We're talking about culture.
Yes,
we're talking about
America
culture.
has a culture.
So the thing is that when we start talking about anything, you have to really understand that the same issues that we're dealing with here, they're dealing with in China, they're dealing with in Japan. It's the fact that the world is just not an honest place. It's not a nice place. It's not. You walk out every day assuming that if you walk past a person, that person may not do anything to you. Assuming that person is a regular person just like you. Not assuming that person might be a schizophrenic, or that person might be a manic depressive, or he might have a pocket full of pills, or he might have a pistol. You don't
suicide bomb.
You just walk outside. What's going on. You walk outside every single day completely naive to the fact that the world is very, very much as dangerous as it was back during the Roman Empire. It's just as dangerous as it was back when Jesus was supposedly walking. Muhammad is back in the days. It's been dangerous since its inception. You got to understand, a snake came in the Garden of Eden and convinced people to bite an apple that they was told not to by the supreme being. How much better do you think it gets than that?
Right.
So even in the stories about, like, even if you take it like a step further, you go into like Osiris, like the stories of the world's origin are the stories that were passed down through different religions and sectors are gory in nature. They're horrible stories. Zeus, adulterer, out messing around with everything. All these stories that we hear about these deities, these great things that have such human-like characteristics and are terrible people. Aphrodite, jealous of everybody, want to kill him because she prettier than me. Like, what you got to understand something, that we've been reading about these same type of behaviors that at one point in time, these were people's gods 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago.
So is there a such thing as creating a better world, or is there a such thing as just understanding the world we live in and
It's
living your
about
best
being
life such
honest.
there?
It's about being honest. Like when the Soviet Union was together and they had all them countries in there, they thought that they were doing something about spreading communism around and stuff like that. And it ultimately ended up to Stalin killing 10 million, 20 million of his own people. Everybody has this utopia that lives inside of their individual minds,
And it's not
and
reality.
it's
And
not
yeah.
reality. In my world, if I express the thoughts that go on inside of my head, people would think that I was absolutely crazy. If I told somebody what my idea of a utopia was, they would think like, dude, you are off.
You know what I'm getting from this? Any revolution that will be had, be it a racial revolution, be it a societal or a cultural revolution, etc., starts on an individual level.
It
Every
is.
single one.
It is. The whole thing is the fact that the only thing that a militia is just a group of individuals who come together in an armed fashion for a common goal. So whether you a
I
gangster,
didn't say nothing about arming nothing, by the way.
I'm using that as an example. So whether you a street gang, whether you a church, no matter what the thing is, like everybody, when you get up and go to work, if everybody works for Walmart, every Walmart employee, regardless what your position is, they are all there with an understanding of a common goal. So regardless of whatever personal things they have going on in their life, they put it to the side for that common goal.
We have become so selfish as a society. How do we have people put that aside? Because I feel like we just gonna keep going in the circle. So I'm gonna just, you know
We're
what?
not, because you got to peel back the layers of the onion. You can't get to the core if you're gonna leave layers on the outside of the onion. You got to peel it back.
But okay. But then it takes me literally back to what I said a few minutes ago, where it's like, if that's the case, then what do we say to those people who are selfishly protecting themselves?
Nothing.
That part is very hard for me to get. I don't understand. What's making that part hard for me to accept?
This is a hat. No matter what I say to this hat, it's not going to respond to me. It's not going to do anything that it is not meant to do. You got to understand something. I think I gave you this this analogy before. Pharaoh from the Bible, was he evil or was he good?
You're right.
So
It's all, even if we go down to the Davids of the Bible, etc., we got into that as well.
So no matter how you look at it, there's a part of it that it's ideology. It's based off how a person feels. So the thing is that if somebody feels like they want to be the peacekeepers for the race, cool. It just may not be your time. If somebody want to be the Benedict Arnolds of the race, cool, no problem. There's a special place for you too. My whole thing is that at the end of the day, it's not about anything other than the fact that until you see yourself as a person, other people who see themselves as a person with value, people with value. If you got a chain that is $1,000 gold chain, you don't wear that $1,000 gold chain everywhere because it has value. So if I know I'm going to the hood, I'm not wearing that, because if I'm not in a position where I know that I have autonomy to move around and not get touched, you don't wear that stuff.
Right.
You
Right.
don't do those things, because I don't want to attract a situation where I might get robbed for it. So at the end of the day, when you start thinking about things as value, things that are valuable, you don't go everywhere, you don't do everything, you don't take part in everything, you maintain yourself at a standard. So therefore, when it comes down to people who don't think the way I do, I'm always open to have conversations, because you can learn something from everybody. But when it comes down to who's riding along, I'm not trying to convince somebody who is not sold on that this is the ride, because you might need to be at the blue car while I'm trying to fill up the red car. Why am I trying to fill up the red car with blue-minded ideology? It don't work.
Right.
When you get in here, it's going to cause chaos inside. I don't
Right.
need chaos inside that, unless we can see that regardless of what you feel, you Crip, you Blood, you GD, you Stone. But until we see ourselves as people, and the rest of that stuff can go to the side until we get here. Let me give you this. The definition of community: a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. And we talked about this.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. A neighborhood is just a group of a place where a bunch of people live. It's the name. You live in Auburn Gresham. That's the name of the neighborhood. Whether you move out of Auburn Gresham and move in or move out, it's still gonna be Auburn Gresham.
Right.
But the community, if the community completely moves out of Auburn Gresham and moves to West Chatham, it's still the community. The community, it does what it does.
And let's look at it like this.
Functions.
Even in using that as an example, in the Chicagoland area, like what we were talking about, the community moved. When I first moved to Matson, pre-white flight, you know what I'm saying? We weren't a part of the community per se. You understand what I'm saying? We were part of a neighborhood. That community moved. They went to Frankfurt. Then our community came from the city out there, and all of this is the same neighborhood, but different communities within that neighborhood during that point in time.
The whole thing is that the community is that if you still have relevance where you're from, and I can go someplace else and I can bridge those things, that is a community. The community is a linking system to where I'm down here in Florida, but I still have connection where I'm from. And I can bridge that thing where I'm from with who I've acquired where I'm at. That is a community. A community is anybody who shares a common understanding, common goal, common practice, whatever it is. If you are a group of lawyers and y'all are a community, like a lawyer community, whether you're a prosecutor, defense, marriage, divorce, whatever the circumstances are, y'all a community of lawyers. Y'all may not all do the same thing, but y'all all practice law in a way, in one way or another. So y'all all deal with sectors of this thing called the law.
Right.
So this
now
is
let's do this then, because I want to tie this up in a pretty bow, because I do need to let you go. I'm thinking about you and your family too. But let's do this to tie this up in a beautiful bow. And understanding what community is. What does our community, and when I say our community, I mean our like-minded people right now, what do we need to do during this very volatile time where, let's just keep it real, racial tensions are at an all-time high? What do we need to do right now?
Racial tensions are not at all-time high. Like that's
no, hold on. No. But I mean, this very moment on May 27, 2020, at just before 8 o'clock, Central Standard Time.
Racial tensions were at all-time high when you had the Watts riots and the Detroit riots and the Chicago fires and all these things. Like when the major cities broke out into mass catastrophe. So let's not muddy the water. Like we're gonna talk about stuff.
So what do we do now then, so that we don't?
What you don't do is you don't do what's not working. You get out of the street with the signs. You do something different. You mobilize and y'all sit down and y'all come up with a constructive conversation. Y'all link together. Y'all don't put it on Facebook. Y'all don't share it through text. Y'all don't have a cell phone in the building where y'all discussing what y'all plans are going to do, and y'all execute the moment that the meeting adjourns. That's what you do. So what we doing right here is what we doing right here. But when it's time to have any type of real action, it won't be on Zoom. It won't be.
Exactly.
It won't be via FaceTime. There won't be a trace for it.
Right.
Because when it's time to act, when those guys went out there to the North Dakota pipeline and marched into that building, they didn't put that stuff on Facebook saying like, yeah, at 12 o'clock today, we're going to go
over here.
They armed themselves and they went on about their business. And they did what they did. So the whole thing about it is that statement, the revolution will not be televised. It's a real conversation that people, if it's on here, it's not real. If it's on social media, if it's on YouTube, it's not real. Any of the hoteps, any of the people that's information pimping, whatever it is, I don't care if it's on, if it's televised, if your enemy, quote unquote, can see what your plans are,
right.
It's not real.
Right.
It's mouth service. So until people are here, and there are groups of people that are actually mobilized, they're actually available, they actually are doing things on the grassroots. So, regardless of my criticism of Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter is active. So whatever it is that they're doing what they're doing. So the thing is that I don't know if you're active in a progressive or a retroactive method. I got my opinions about it, but at the same token, it's still moving.
It's still movement, correct.
So the whole thing is that regardless of what I feel about the NAACP, my thing is that no matter what's happening, you cannot stand still and criticize something that's moving. But at the same token, if anybody wants to get real about a situation, it causes you to be real about the situation, that you put your religious beliefs to the side. You got to put your personal biases to the side, your sexual orientation to the side, and you come together for the greater good of what's important. So if that is not the motivation, if it's not what Jesus would say this, well, Jesus wasn't real, we were Hebrew and this, that, and the third, and Jesus was black. If that's the conversation that y'all having, I don't even want to talk to you. It ain't
gonna go nowhere.
I don't want to talk to you because you're trying to bring degrees of separation into this. You motivate off of your God, your belief in what it is.
Those degrees of separation within our community.
We have to keep it real. And the thing is that regardless, like, people that got killed that worship our lodge, like people that got killed that worship Jesus Christ. People got killed that worship Buddha. People that's agnostic and atheist. All of them, all the philosophies, none of it matter when it comes down to injustice. If you're going to do something and you're going to be serious about it, you have to remove the degrees of separation and you have to actually mobilize for what matters. So therefore, if it's going to be that we all work at Wendy's, we all make $8.25, and we're going to take a portion of our check, and what we're going to do is that over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to rent an apartment. It's going to be like 2 or 3 of us to an apartment. We're going to pool our money, pool our resources, and do this, that, and third. And what we're going to do is that we're going to save this money, be a down payment on one of these on one of these little things. Okay, now with this little corner store right here that this guy over here have. We're going to stop shopping there. We're going to rally. We're going to protest. We're going to protest with our people. Go a little bit further to go to that gas station. Put this one out of business. So what's going to happen is that once he realizes he ain't making no money, he's going to lease it first. Mm-hmm. And somebody else is going to move up in there. In the community. He's going to lease it to somebody else. And when it becomes too much of a burden where he's paying taxes and nobody else will move in there and he puts it up for sale, we will have over the years mobilized enough money to be able to put a sizable down payment, if not pay half of what it is, because the value of it is already going to be low because of the neighborhood that it's in. So we buy it, we stock it, we take some of these people that we've been mobilizing, that we've been buying up the brownstones of the houses or different things in the neighborhood, and we put those people to work. And once we start turning over that profit and those things that is we have, I'm not worried about winning people off of the alcohol, the cigarettes, and none of that stuff that I think that's poison. We got bigger things that we need to see each other as people. And until we see this thing as something bigger than the individual, but as a collective agreement, we're not going to have anything. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to sit here and be talking.
I don't even want to add no more to this conversation. I want to leave with that charge, G. Do me a favor. Let's chat real quick and let them know and give them a little preview of kind of some of the people we're going to be discussing and the conversations we'll be having with Black Souls Lost.
So basically with the Black Souls Lost concept, once it was discussed, it was basically us talking about different Black people throughout the last, you can realistically say the last 10 years, maybe a little longer, that we, since the rise of social media, and we've gotten more information to where we're not just getting that information from one source, we can actually dig into these things. And since a lot of the dust has settled on, like, let's say the Trayvon Martin case or the Eric Garner, we can dig in, find the information that was not told at that time, go through the court transcripts, go through different things that were not discussed, and really dig in and find some things so that we can rehumanize these people in the eyes of the people, but also so that we never forget. That's one of the most important things.
Correct.
You notice from the Jewish community, they will put out a movie every year to discuss the Holocaust.
Yep.
We need to have the same level of reverence about our fallen soldiers in whatever capacity, and make sure that we do not forget.
Correct. So everybody look forward to Black Souls Lost. We're going to be having 8 episodes for our first season to initially launch. And it'll be much like this. We're going to be sharing screens. We're going to be talking evidence. We're going to be talking statistics. We're going to be talking all of it. And I'm very honored to be partnering up with Mike Jones from 23 Centuries Media.
Your source media for the 900 2000. Make sure
you know
download. Make sure you download the mobile app, 23 Centuries Media. The very first episode is going to be launched. We'll let you guys know. You could
in June.
If you have the mobile app, you'll be able to get the push notifications to let you know once it's released. So you want to be on top of that. You want to get it first before YouTube and everybody else. Trust me, it's going to be very informative. We're going to dig down, dig deep. We're going to offer some perspective and give you guys some stuff that, it's going to be good. Let me just say it.
And I'm going to put the mobile app on the screen right now for y'all to see it. And it's very important. Like he said, I need y'all to understand you cannot get the first episode when it's released unless you have the 23 Centuries mobile media app.
Your source media for the 900 2000.
Yeah, I'm not about to do this with you.
Listen,
thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I already know the public perception when it comes out, and I'm ready for it, however it happens. But unfortunately, some things just need to be said. And I'm always open to criticism, especially if it's fact-based. So if you don't have facts behind the things that you say or documentation, anything like that, then, the emotional responses, clearly they don't get anything done. But if you
what he just said is, if you're going to come at one of us, come with some facts. Don't come with your emotional triggers, because we all got them.
I don't. My emotional triggers.
I do.
Okay. She got emotional triggers, and I like to laugh at people. So.
All right, y'all. But thank you so much for those who have watched. If you got anything from this, press the share button. You can find this on the 23 Centuries Media Facebook page. You can also find this on the So Say & Co Media page. We'll get this put on the app, and we will get this put on YouTube. And we will see y'all soon. This is So Say.